How to Be a UU Leader by Denise, Taft, Davidoff. Number 1, breathe deeply. Number 2, relinquish control. Number 3, learn to pray. Number 4, play fair. Number 5, temper narcissism. Number 6, read poetry. 7, internalize patience. 8, listen intently. 9, admit errors. And number 10, breathe deeply. We welcome you into this space and we invite you to do just that. Have a good deep breath and find yourself wherever you are in this beautiful day. It is good to be together. We welcome you in this fellowship where we have a diversity of people and a diversity of life situations and life experiences, and yet we all come together. We gather around our covenant and we gather around our relationships with one another. So wherever you are on your life journey this very day, we welcome you into this space because we shall be known by the company we keep, and it is good to be in your company. And we'll start with our first song, also by Mamuse, and it is We Shall Be Known.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Light. Everyone is trying their best. Good morning. My name is Annette Wilson Christensen, And as I read this morning's chalice lighting words, I invite you to light your own chalice at home as well. Today's chalice lighting words are from the author Janaea Cecilia. This poem's message of nourishment and caring seemed especially fitting as we move from a harsh winter into the hope of spring. Treat people like you would treat your garden. Care for them. Be kind to them. Nourish them. Be forgiving if they don't grow the way you would have liked. Everyone is trying their best to grow through all the seasons of their life. May it be so.
Now please join me in singing our chalice lighting response, Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Good morning. I'm Chayla Sloper, your Congregational Life Facilitator, and I have today's announcements. Firstly, a warm welcome to those who are visiting, maybe from parts far away or parts near. If this is your first or second time and you'd like to let us know that you're with us today, feel free either to fill out the virtual visitor form or later during Joys and Sorrows, you can just put a note into the chat and we can say hello to you and greet you that way. This is our close approximation to welcoming you with a smile in the sanctuary. So this month, May, our worship theme is story. So it's a time to think about the stories that we tell, the stories of our life, the stories that shape us, many things about story. So stay tuned for interesting opportunities to consider stories throughout the month. One really exciting story is the story of this year's auction. Kudos, big applause to the auction team that did a marvelous job of launching our first virtual auction. And if you haven't seen the news, $9,700 for the financial health of our congregation. So again, that was just delightful. And I mean, it really is just, I should just let it go. It was really remarkable. So big kudos to the auction team. Okay, so this week on Wednesday, this is the first Wednesday of the month on May 5th. So we'll have a midweek contemplative service. That's Wednesday, 7:30 on Zoom. Reverend Scott invites you to a quieter time. There'll be readings, some music, time for some reflections and shared discussions. So that's 7:30 on Zoom. And the link is at the calendar. If you go to uufco.org/calendar, that's where you'll find the Zoom links. Thursday, May 6th, the Women's Connections Group invites you to a panel of women who ran for public office in Central Oregon. And that'll be 6 o'clock. If you'd like to RSVP, and that's how you'll get the link for that event, then go to the website and look for Women's Connections, and then you can respond to that specific event. So that's on Thursday, May 6th, Women Who Ran. And I'm looking forward to that myself. Now, big opportunity for service, working outside together, and helping beautify our memorial gardens. So this Saturday, starting at 9:30 in the morning, you'll be able to schlep some things and dig some dirt and plant and water some plants as the memorial gardens take more shape. So this is an opportunity to serve, an opportunity to be with other UUFCOers, and an opportunity to see a project moving forward to its fulfillment. And the Memorial Gardens team has also asked if you would RSVP, that will help them plan for the day. And to do that, just email memorialgardens with an S at uufco.org. Please do wear a mask, and then as the day unfolds, that can be sorted out. Whether you'd need to continue wearing them if you're working alone. But all the same, please bring a mask. And 9:30 is when it starts, and there's work to do until it's done. So looking a little farther down the road, mark your calendars for Thursday, June 3rd. That'll be our next blood drive at the church. And then also General Assembly. That'll be on the last weekend in June, June 23rd to 27th. It'll be virtual. And it really is a remarkable opportunity. It's sort of like sometimes what they call seminary for the day. There's speakers, there's opportunities to meet and worship with other UUs from around the globe, wherever UUs are found. And the Where lecture, this is on Saturday afternoon. This year it features Stacey Abrams, who has become a heroine in the minds of many Americans for her just tireless work for democracy. And then also this gentleman, Desmond Meade, who also is working for voter rights and access. Anyway, the Where lecture has included the likes of Mary Oliver, Krista Tippett, Martin Luther King, and other big notables. So this is always a really exciting time. But in order to hear the Where lecture, you need to register for GA. So if you're interested in attending General Assembly, please contact either me or Mark Steinberg. And if you'd like to work as a delegate, going to some business sessions and seeing how the whole UUA operates, we can make that possible for you as well. I think that's going to be it. So this being May 2nd, may your garden grow, the garden in your heart, the garden in your life, and may you have blessings on this beautiful Sunday.
Good morning. I'm Amy Brock, Director of Religious Exploration for Children and Youth. Like Chayla said, our theme this month is story. And last week I got to meet with some of our UUFCO teenagers to talk about our upcoming youth-led service. They want to share a story with all of you. And so we talked about some things that are important to put in a story. What should we think about when we are sharing a story? When I talk to very young people about stories, I often start with looking at parts of a book together, like this one. We talk about the front of the book, the back of the book, the spine, and then we find the title and the author and the illustrator. And some books, if you open up the cover, have a title page. Once we know about the parts that a book has, then we can think more about what types of stories we want to tell. There are many types of stories, and they're often labeled as fiction or nonfiction, real or pretend. Today in our RE class, our older elementary students were able to tell us a lot about genres that might be in a story. There are genres that are real, like informational text, and there are genres that are pretend, more like fantasy. So many different things to consider when we are writing a story or choosing a story to read. A story has characters, and we usually use a story's pages to look for information or to share information about those characters. And that's where it matters what kind of story it is. If a story and its characters are pretend, then we can use our imagination to create ideas about what might happen and help our characters in those stories solve problems. But if the story that we're creating is real, it's important to make sure that we check in with the real characters that our story is about. to make sure that they're okay with our sharing their story, and to make sure that the story that we're going to tell about them matches the way that they really experience that story. The story that I'm going to share with you today is an Ethiopian tale. It's a pretend fictional story that was written in this form by someone named Heather Forrest, and it's from our Tapestry of Faith curriculum. However, even though our story today is pretend, there are parts of it that might be true or not true. I wonder if we can find them together as we read. We can try to create kind of a visual virtual experience of this on Zoom if you like. So if you hear something while I'm reading that you think is true, raise one hand or drop your ear over to your shoulder. If you hear something while I'm reading that you think is false, raise both hands or drop your chin to your chest. And I'll tell you what I noticed at the end. Long, long ago, fire and water, truth and falsehood lived together in one big house. Although they were polite toward one another, truth and falsehood sat on opposite sides of the room. Fire constantly leapt out of water's path so that they wouldn't cross and destroy each other. One day they were moving through unclaimed land and they found a large number of cows. And so they began taking these cows that nobody owned to their home in the village. "Let us share these cows equally," said Truth as they traveled across the grasslands. "This is the fair way." No one disagreed with Truth, except for Falsehood. Falsehood wanted more than their equal share of cows, but they kept very quiet about it for the moment. Then one day, Falsehood went secretly to Water and they whispered, "Water, you are more powerful than fire. If you destroy fire, there will be more cows for each of us." So Water listened. They flowed over fire and it bubbled and steamed until fire was all gone. Water meandered along, cheerfully thinking that this would mean more cows for themselves. Meanwhile, Falsehood whispered to Truth. "Look," they said, "see for yourself. Water has killed fire. Let us leave Water, who has cruelly destroyed our warm-hearted friend. We must take the cows high up into the mountains." And so Truth and Falsehood began to travel up, up, up the mountain. And Water tried to follow, but the mountain was just too steep and Water could not flow upwards. So Water washed down upon itself, splashing and swirling around the rocks as it tumbled down the slopes. They say that if you look carefully today, you will see that Water is still tumbling down mountains instead of moving upward. Eventually, Truth and Falsehood did arrive at the mountaintop. Falsehood turned to Truth and said in a very loud voice, "I am more powerful than you. You will be my servant, and I will be your master, and all of the cows will belong to me." Truth rose up and spoke out. "I will not be your servant," they said. So they battled and battled with their swords, and finally they brought the argument to Wind to decide who would be the most powerful. But Wind didn't know. So Wind blew all around the world to ask people whether truth or falsehood were more powerful. Some people said a single word of falsehood can completely destroy truth. And other people said, like a small candle in the darkness, truth can really change every situation. Wind finally did return to the mountain, and they said, "I have seen that falsehood is very powerful, but it can rule only where truth has stopped struggling to be heard. You are both equally powerful." And it has been that way ever since. Did you identify anything in this story that was maybe true or false? I noticed that it's true that falsehood and truth are both very powerful and that they often battle each other, not with swords, but they can definitely have their differences, and sometimes it can be hard to tell which one of them is right. However, I'm pretty sure that water flows down mountains because of gravity and not because of what happened in this story. So that part is probably false. I wonder what your favorite part of a story or book is. Maybe it's fiction, maybe it's nonfiction. maybe we'll talk about it together this month. And so ends our time today. Let's all say the Children's Covenant. In this place, I am kind. In this place, I am loving. In this place, I'm a friend to the earth and all animals and people. In this place, I am loved.
Thanks, Amy. We all have a story. And over the course of our lives, sometimes that storyline is difficult. And sometimes that storyline is beautiful and joyous. We gather to share our stories with one another. We gather to share what's on our hearts and what's in our lives. We know that a story shared is a story lifted up. So we'll now open our chat box down below. And if you have a joy or a sorrow that's been a part of your life story recently, we invite you to share that in our chat.
And as you share your joys and sorrows, I thought I would play this old favorite from Tony Mitchell, Both Sides Now, which seemed to fit the topic of our conversation today.
They say that there's two sides to every story, but in truth, there are probably more sides than two. Neil Zora Hurston once said that nothing that God ever made is the same thing to more than one person. So here's a story. It's some good old-fashioned Unitarian Universalist drama. At General Assembly, which Shayla was talking about earlier, in 2019, in Spokane, Washington, a Unitarian Universalist minister by the name Reverend Todd Eckloff wrote a book, and at GA began passing this book out. It's titled The Gadfly Papers, 3 Inconvenient Essays by One Pesky Minister. It's self-published, and the response was swift, to say the least. On one side, there were people of color and trans folks and immigrants and the Right Relations team's members who felt that Eckloff's ideas were inflammatory, that they were harmful, and that they felt inconsistent with our UU values. About 500 white ministers signed a letter within 2 days. We signed this, I was one of the people who signed it, to say that the text did not speak for us. We wanted to be allies to our trans folks, our people of color, and our siblings. Though, on the other side, there were large numbers of white cisgender people who liked Reverend Eckloff's ideas, or they objected to the way his ideas were being questioned. You see, Reverend Eckloff was told to stop circulating his essays until he would sit down and listen to why folks were upset, about why folks felt that his language was harmful. He did not sit down to have that conversation with the Ministers Association or the people from UUA. He decided to leave General Assembly instead. And so to this whole group, this whole process felt like suppression of free speech, which also felt inconsistent with our UU values. The book, in Eckloff's view, is about what's wrong with Unitarian Universalism today, especially our social justice programs. I've read it, and he would say that safetyism, identity politics, and political correctness are corroding the foundations of liberal religion as we know it. So Eckloff wasn't expelled for his opinion, but rather refusing to cooperate and be in relationship. I don't think that's censorship so much as a denial of process. Unfortunately, more harm has come from this. Several ministers felt like they could no longer be a part of the Unitarian Universalist Ministers Association. We have a tradition of heretics. We are proud heretics. If you go back to 1819, that's where our tradition in this country begins, with William Ellery Channing's Baltimore Sermon. We look for those people to challenge truth, and we lift that up. But in my reading, what happened here was unfortunate. The text was argumentative and combative, and simply not invitational. In a very complicated conversation around race and around trans rights, it was not curious. It didn't invite that larger conversation. What is it that holds us together during these hard conversations? This is why it's a religious issue. It has to do with how we are related to one another and how we are related to our core values and to the world that we are trying to create, and how we imperfectly continue to put our efforts in that direction. For us as a religious people who gather with diversity, we need this idea of relationship, of covenant. Like most people, I can be a little conflict avoidant sometimes, but when handled well, conflict draws us closer together. We can grow and learn from one another. We can grow and learn about ourselves. It must be done carefully and lovingly, and with some deep breaths along the way. Just recently, we had one of these conversations in our congregation. It was one of our working groups, and things had just gotten a little off. There was some miscommunication, there was some misunderstanding and some assumptions. And so we all gathered together, and we listened intently, and we shared intently. This is the embodiment of our covenantal nature. It reminds us of the promises that we make to one another and our hopes for the wider world. It grounds us to come back over and over again to compassion and curiosity and respect. And those, it seems to me, were missing from Eckloff's book. Compassion, just to be kind, to speak from the heart, but to speak with love, communicating directly and honestly and with caring. And curiosity, being curious about the other person's view, being willing not to be right, being willing to let go, to relinquish control of a situation, and to reflect on our own lens that we bring to it. Being curious is essential to covenantal relationship. And finally, respect, just decent respect. Kurt Vonnegut once said that if the whole world would simply respect one another, then we would get to where we need to go. Respect invites us to listen deeply so that others feel heard. Respect avoids judging and blaming or shaming or trying to fix others, but it honors their position. If someone says that they're harmed, then it says, I respect that. Respecting all of our unique learning styles and our social ability and our life experience and our gender identity and our socioeconomic status, our mental condition, our race, our age, our personality, our sexual orientation, our theology, our politics, that's a lot to hold. But with respect, we can do that. Kelly Wiseman Asbruth Jackson writes about the church that doesn't matter. In the church that doesn't matter, there are no quarrels, no arguments, and no one ever says anything they regret at the meeting to discuss the sanctuary's new paint color. There's nothing to inspire such passion and intensity because none of the decisions that church touch anyone's heart. And no one lives or dies by their choices, or even feels for a moment like they might. Everything is easy as pie. In the church that doesn't matter, no one asks for money or even talk about it that much. There's always enough to go around. There's always enough because no matter how much there is, there's always less to do with it than that. The vision always shrinks to undermatch the means. So canvas season is always a breeze. And in the church that doesn't matter, no one ever disagrees with the preacher's sermon. The music is always just fine. There's never a fight about their liturgy, not even if they do joys and sorrows or if they stop doing joys and sorrows aloud. There's never any controversy because no one ever really says anything they really care about, and no one ever really seems to care. And so the service is always equally inoffensive at both 9 and 11. The sounds of children during worship, the recruitment of Sunday school teachers, the compensation of professional religious educators, and the size and condition for the space of the religious education, none of these are ever talked about or thought about in the church that doesn't matter. Those issues just take care of themselves somehow. No one ever has to clean up in the church that doesn't matter, or figure out an old electrical system, or consult with the building codes, or climb a ladder. If no one bothers to make coffee on Sunday, no one complains, and no one greets the visitors, no one seems to mind. Everything is easier in the church that doesn't matter. The total solution to all the frustrations of congregational life requires no consultants, manuals, or webinars. Simply avoid at all costs meaning and purpose in anything that might lead you to either or both. Whatever you do, don't let yourself care about the people around you or the covenant that you share. Yet knowing this, we still decide again and again to ask the tough questions, to take real risks, to do the work that needs doing, to tell the truth. We get out of bed on Sunday morning, answer that email, make something for the bake sale, and we give our time and attention to a meeting every third Thursday. We ask each other how we're doing, and we mean it. We make phone calls and craft projects for the first grade class. We offer our gifts both humble and great. And we do these things, sometimes in joy, and sometimes not in joy, because they are done in service to the church that matters. We're invited into relationship and into covenant. Sometimes that's difficult work, but if we allow ourselves to be guided by love, truly guided by love, by compassion, by curiosity, and by respect, then we can become a church that does matter, that touches our hearts, and that does justice work in the world. Mark and I were discussing what song would fit this service today. Mark quickly said, "Love Will Guide Us" is one of his favorites, so we'll ask Mark to sing that for us now as we remind ourselves that love will guide us.
And Scott, I wanted to say that the stole you are wearing, Side with Love, that exemplifies for me the real core principle that animates most of us. We can argue over the details, but siding with love is what UU is all about for me. So please join me in singing Love Will Guide Us. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us will lead the way. On the road from greed to giving, love will guide us through the hard night.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for noticing my stole. Another story for the day, as originally shared in the UU World magazine. You'll notice that this says, "Side with love." It used to say, "Standing on the side of love," but we've made a shift. For years, Reverend Jason Shelton heard rumblings about his song, "Standing on the Side of Love." People with disabilities felt excluded by the words. Shelton was our music director in Nashville, Tennessee for about 19 years. The story behind the song was that the phrase was first spoken by the UUA, the Unitarian Universalist Association president, William Singford, in 2004. Shelton was meeting with Singford at the UUA headquarters when word came out that President George Bush had called for a constitutional amendment banning same-sex marriage. Singford took a call to tell a reporter. "We are standing on the side of love," said Bill Singford. Shelton started scribbling out notes for a song that was in his head. He called it one of the most powerful and sacred and creative moments I've ever experienced. And the song quickly became an anthem for us, Unitarian Universalists, sung at state capitals across the country as we were fighting for marriage equality. It became a rallying cry when Unitarian Universalists were thrown into jails in 2010 in Phoenix, alongside immigrants demonstrating for their rights, and during Justice GA in 2012. And the UUA's public advocacy campaign was named for it, "Standing on the Side of Love." It became quickly the slogan of our faith, as well as one of our most famed and favorite hymns. Perhaps you've seen these yellow shirts at a rally sometime. Standing on the side of love. They decided to use marigold as the color because it was bright and unmistakable. It would pop out of a crowd in any demonstration. And so, here we were with a whole campaign and a song that made disabled people feel like the words did not speak for them. At General Assembly in 2016, the Reverend Teresa Soto spelled out for the denomination how ableist language makes her feel. She has cerebral palsy and uses a scooter. And so when the song "Standing on the Side of Love" would be sung, she didn't feel it was including her. The theme for ministers that week was also around walking. as a spiritual practice and as a metaphor. It was woven through homilies and readings and hymns. And at the Sunday service, Soto, who was being recognized as a newly fellowshipped minister, sat on the front of the stage in her scooter, and she held up a sign that said, "Ouch," at every standing or walking metaphor. This got Shelton thinking about his song. He never intended to exclude anyone with it. Indeed, he was wanting to be inclusive. So in August of 2016, he decided, as the author of the song, to change the words. To change the words from standing on the side of love to answering the call of love. Change the words that are in our hymnal? How could we do it? But he knew that his values were calling him to do that. More important than calcified words were the harm that he knew he was creating. That's where the pain comes from. Not from the words themselves, but from the thoughtlessness. We need a moment, Soto says, that acknowledges that there are people in a room who can't hear. So we need to use a microphone, or who don't take in information in the same way. So we might need to repeat ourselves. We can't possibly accommodate everyone because we don't know what all the needs are. So please let us know if our language is problematic. We don't want that to be the case. And so if we do begin to look at our hymnal, there are lots of embodied metaphors. Guide my feet. One more step. Do you hear? And the goal is not to simply rewrite everything. Sometimes it's just about giving a little bit of context. Hey, we're going to sing about feet now. Just remember, walking is not our only spiritual expression. We have all kinds. And that takes a little more time and a little more space. But isn't it worth it to be inclusive? After singing Answering the Call of Love, the decision was split. Some people liked the old version. Some people liked the new one. Perhaps the best place for these hard conversations is in churches, where we are committed to one another. When someone in our community says that they're feeling pain or rejected or harm, we can't just ignore that. The work we do together is to navigate this pain. Sometimes we need to make big changes, and sometimes there are small course corrections. But we ask the question over and over, how can we learn from the hurt? There's a larger question, Shelton once said, about liturgical language as metaphor that we need to have. But we have that by coming together in conversation. And we're not going to have it if people who hold power treat language as sacred, an unchangeable text. How do you move towards an equalizing power? And he said that, I guess I would have to sacrifice one of my darlings. I mean, they had to recall a lot of Stoles. Delegates later voted overwhelmingly in favor of a responsive resolution written by Soto to change the name of the Standing on the Side Love campaign. Soto said she was deeply touched by Jason Shelton's willingness to at first feel a little hurt himself and then listen to what they had to say, to wrestle with it, and to make a large gesture that would reach out to his disabled colleagues out of love, answering that call of love. It's right there in the song. And Soto chose answering the call of love to be sung at her ordination. That's what is required sometimes, is to do the work, to be inconvenienced, to listen, to be curious, to be compassionate, and to be respectful. It's coming again and again with those on our hearts and on our sleeves to be in conversation, to be in relationship, to not always get it right, but to be willing to shift. And so I'm not concerned about liberal religion. Indeed, I think we are with our social justice priorities, leaning into answering the call of love, leaning into our core values that doesn't show up as dogma, but shows up as grounding faith for who we are in the world and the world that we dream about. Compassion, curiosity, and respect. When we bring these together at the table, then we can do great things, although those things might require us to change. Isn't that good? Don't we want to grow as individuals in our spiritual lives and as a congregation dedicated to justice, compassion, curiosity, and respect? We say our covenant each week here to close our service, and it's to remind ourselves of the promises we make to one another. It's to remind ourselves that we're always growing, and no matter what, we are always in relationship with one another. It's the foundation of our faith: relationship, relationship, and relationship, over and over again, over and over again. And so, yes, sometimes it'll be difficult, and we'll need to breathe deeply. We'll need to relinquish control. We would do well to learn to pray. We would hope to play fair. Hopefully we could temper our narcissism as well. And we should read some poetry along the way. Internalizing patience, we can listen intently. We can admit errors. And we can breathe deeply together, breathing deeply. May it be so. May it be so in relationship this day and every day. Amen. Will you join us as we sing our closing hymn, Answering the Call of Love?
The promise of the Spirit, faith, hope, and love abide, and so every soul is blessed and made whole. The truth in our hearts is our guide. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. Sometimes we build a barrier to keep love tightly bound, corrupted by fear, unwilling to hear, denying the beauty we found. We are answering the call of love. Hands joined together as hearts beat as one. Emboldened by faith, we dare to proclaim we are answering the call of love. A bright new day is dawning, when love will not divide. Reflections of grace in every embrace, fulfilling the vision divine. We are answering the call of love.
I have Peggy spotlighted on my computer. Is that right?
Oh, really? I thought we were doing the covenant now. Um, I can do Peggy. Here we go, Peggy.
No, we do need to extinguish our chalice here and do our covenant. All right, here we are. So if you've lit a chalice in your home, we invite you to extinguish that at this time as we say together our church covenant. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. A good reminder of what we do here. We invite you to stay for our virtual coffee hour after Peggy's postlude, and we're exploring the question, what exactly is the difference between our core values and being grounded in our core values and dogma? I think we would say that we want to be grounded in our core values, and as Unitarian Universalists, we don't hold dogma or dogmatic thinking very well. So we invite you to stay after our service for our virtual coffee hour. We'll also, during the postlude, put up a tile that has information on how you can support the work of this congregation by offering an offering. You can text to give, or you can head to our website and donate there. Answering the call of love. It's funny, when I sing that song, I still get confused. I still start to sing Standing on the Side of Love. It was one of my first and favorite UU hymns that I knew and loved and took into my body. And it's just a great reminder that answering the call of love requires of us to be flexible and to shift and to change over time. May we do that work together. May we be flexible and shift over time. That is the tradition of this liberal tradition faith. We do that work together. We don't know where the story will lead, but we write it each time for justice. Go in peace. Amen.